and achievement in race relationship through the building of interracial relationship and standing for racial reconciliation, work far beyond their call to duty in promoting reconciliation among all men and women in our United States, as well as specifically in the Mississippi Annual Conference. I'm going to ask Maxie Dunham to come and Keith Tonko to come to represent the 28 signers.
Why don't you be seated? For over 30 years now, I have practiced a spiritual discipline that I call keeping company with the saints. I try to live with the writings of those who are recognized as the interpreters and the apologists for the Christian faith. One of those persons is Brother Lawrence, and many of you know his name, and you know a famous story out of his life. His saying that he was as much at home washing pots and pans in the monastery as he was attending to Holy Communion. But that's not the story that has impressed me most. He entered the monastery thinking that he was giving up all the world's goods and all the chances for happiness. But he discovered a far deeper happiness than he'd ever known before. And on one occasion he was praying, and he was reflecting on his experience and how God had intervened throughout his life. And he blurted out, "God, you have outwitted me." Isn't that a marvelous phrase that reflects the gracious providence of God in our life? God has outwitted us. 50 years ago, some young men, now old men, some young men signed a statement, and now this annual conference is saying we appreciate that. God outwits us. That's the storyline of the Christian faith and way. God is continually outwitting us. There have been times since that occasion, many of us left the state, when I have been most pleased with the faithfulness of people like Keith Tonko, who stayed in the state. And there have been occasions when I have felt guilty about having left and wondered what God was doing with all that. But God outwits us. When you think of the contribution that those who left the state have made to the whole church, you know what I mean when I say God outwits us. Two of those persons became presidents of seminaries. Two of them became deans of seminaries. Three of them became pastors of some of the largest churches in the denomination. Many of them became district superintendents in other conferences. And still others not only were members of the General Conference, they led their delegations to the General Conference. God outwits us. The issues that we addressed 50 years ago are issues that are still with us. To be sure, progress has been made, but those issues are still with us, expressing themselves in different ways. I read the statement, and when we talk about being opposed to communism, I thought for a moment, what's that all about? But those occasions were occasions when people were trying to divert us from the central issues by accusing us of something else. That still goes on. The new beloved Pope of the Roman Catholic Church is being accused of being a socialist and a communist because he has reminded us that half the food we leave on our plates when we eat is really stealing from the poor. And public education, I believe, is the primary civil rights issue of the 21st century. And unless we care for the poor, we're not going to be representing the kingdom cause that we pretend to represent. God has outwitted us, and my prayer is that God will continue to outwit us. And 50 years from now, maybe, an annual conference then will look back, and some of you will have taken a stand on behalf of those for whom God has extended preferential treatment, that is the poor. And some of you will have taken a stand on welcoming the stranger in our midst around the occasion of immigration. And others of you will see to it that we don't allow the zip code of a child to determine the kind of education that child gets. So on behalf of these who are still alive, and the memory of those who've already gone to glory, Keith and I receive your recognition with deep, deep appreciation. God gives us memory that we might have roses in December, and we're having a lot of roses today. Thank you.
Kathy Price and Stephen Cook will come now and read the 28 signers' names. They're going to scroll the names and the pictures of those 28 original signers on the screen for you to get a look at who these men were. And after each name, would the family members of the signers, would you please stand at the reading of the name of your relative? And please remain standing until all names are read. And please hold your applause until all 28 names and all the family are standing. Steve. Kathy.
Jerry Furr.
Maxie D. Donovan.
Jim L. Waits.
O. Gerald Trigg.
James B. Nicholson.
Buford A. Dickerson.
James S. Connor.
J. W. Halston.
James P. Rush.
Elwood W. McRae.
Joseph C. Way.
Wallace E. Roberts.
Summer Walters.
Bill Lampton.
Marvin Moody.
Keith Tonkel.
John Ed Thomas.
Emmett Moore Jr.
Denson Napier.
Rod Pinkerton.
Harold Riker.
Ian A. Dickinson.
Ned Keller.
Howard Hall.
Elton Brown.
Bucket Oliver.
Jack Troutman.
Wilton Carter.
These are the names of the signers of the Born of Conviction Statement of Conscience document.
Would you join us in celebrating their gift? so much for recognizing these bold men, for taking a stand, an uncomfortable stand at a time where it wasn't easy to do so. We want to also take the opportunity to recognize another who is among us, Joe Rife, who is the professor of religion at Emory and Henry College in Emory, Virginia. We're going to ask Joe to stand for a few moments so you can recognize Joe and give him a hand of thanks. I'll let you go quiet in a moment. If it had not been for Joe Rife and the research that he's been doing on the 28 signers, many of the things that we had accomplished during this annual conference around recognizing and celebrating the gift of these bold men possibly would not have taken place at the level that it did today. Because of his research and around the 28 signers, he did a lot of the legwork, a lot of the heavy lifting for the Mississippi Annual Conference. He tracked down all of the remaining signers who were left alive. And you may need to know that Joe is also working on a book about the Born of Conviction. So we're so excited and Joe's promised to let us know when that book comes out so we can make it available to you. And we're excited about Joe and his work, and we thank you, Joe. You have a grateful Mississippi Annual Conference for helping us to recognize these men for what they did in 1963. Thank you very much. We're going to ask our bishop to come now and to read a letter of unity and faith in recognition of the life and the work of Medgar Evers and all that he accomplished. You need to know as well, too, that the Medgar and Merle Evers Foundation is